Carolina, Mr. Mulvaney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very briefly to follow up on a question the gentle lady from Ohio asked you. You said that not a day goes by when you don't worry about cybersecurity. Was that the case when you were at the State Department?
Look, I will.
I'm sorry, just yes or no. Did you worry about cybersecurity when you were in State? And then I'll go on to the other questions I was going to ask.
I wasn't Secretary Head for Finance until I was at Treasury.
Okay, so you didn't worry about cyber when you were in charge of operations at State?
No, I didn't say that I didn't worry about cybersecurity.
You see my point, Mr. Liu, but we'll move on. So here's the questions I want to ask you today, because you sent a letter last week about the debt ceiling, something we haven't had a chance to discuss much, a little bit here today. And you closed it with the typical letter saying that you were beginning to use your extraordinary measures, that the debt ceiling had technically been reached, and that you closed the letter by saying that the creditworthiness of the United States is not a bargaining chip, and I again urge Congress to address this matter without controversy or brinksmanship. I happen to share that sentiment. So I thought I'd give you the opportunity now to try and walk back some of the brinksmanship and take this opportunity to assure the financial markets that interest will be paid on the debt, sovereign debt of the United States. Look in the camera and tell people that we have enough money to pay the interest on our debts, and you have the technical ability to make those interest payments on the debts, and calm the financial markets that might otherwise be roiled by concern over non-payment of debt.
Congressman, I hope that we're not going to have another debate like we've had in the past where the world is hanging on whether or not the United States...
I'm hoping the same thing, Mr. Liu, and you have the opportunity right now to say we have enough money to pay the debt and we have the ability to pay the debt. The only thing that prevents us from paying the interest on our debts is whether or not the President chooses to do so or not. Isn't that true?
No, Congressman. What I've said many times and remains the case is if we hit the debt limit and Congress does not act to extend it, as only Congress can do,
correct,
we do not have the ability to meet all of the obligations of the United States, and it would be the first time in history we couldn't pay the bills.
And you and I have had that conversation.
You're asking about one set of bills, and I've acknowledged to this committee that technically we could make interest payments. We do not know the consequences of trying to make some payments and not others.
Thank you for mentioning that, because you and I have discussed this before. This is not new for either one of us, and I had a chance to ask you the last time you were here a question, because previously you had testified to the Senate that you didn't have the technical ability to prioritize payments, and then you wrote a letter to us right before your last hearing in front of this committee and said you did have the technical ability to do that. And I asked you a question. I said, when did you know that they, and in this reference that's the New York Fed, were technologically capable of making the payments? And you said the question is not where will not we make the payments, and I interrupted you and said, I'm not asking that, Mr. Liu. When did you know that payments could be made? And you said, Congressman, I would have to check. Have you done that?
Well, Congressman,
have you done that? You told this committee you would check on when that knowledge became available to you. Have you done that since the last time you were here?
Congressman, what I said to the Senate committee was...
Not asking you what you said to the Senate committee. I'm asking you what I asked you. You told me you checked to find out when that knowledge and information was made available to you. Did you do it?
I have done it, but if you're asking me today, could I tell you the date? I can't tell you the date.
So you didn't know last time you were here, and then you knew and you've forgotten again, and now you don't know again.
Look, Congressman, the question is, we do not have the technical ability to go through all the bills the United States pays and say we're going to pay this one and not that one. The technical question of can we pay interest? Yes, we can. But what about benefits to Social Security? What about veterans? What about vendors? What about electric bills?
And we've had that conversation, Mr. Lewitt. What about the money for giving Swedish massages to bunny rabbits? We do that. What about money for studying whether or not sea monkeys synchronize when they swim? Are those payments just as important as paying the interest payments on our debt?
Congressman, I believe that the United States is a country that makes a commitment, it pays its bills. And when we make commitments to veterans, we pay the veterans. When we make commitments to Social Security, we pay Social Security.
Let's come back to the original issue.
We have the ability to make the kind of decisions.
Why won't you take steps to satisfy and calm the financial markets in this country and around the world to let everybody know who holds U.S. debt that their interest will be paid? Why won't you do that?
The only way for the United States to make all its commitments.
Did I ask you that? Did I ask you about all payments? Have the words all payments come out of my mouth in reference to a question? Why won't you do that? I've got 30 seconds.
Congressman,
here's my point to you, Mr. Liu. You want the brinksmanship.
No,
you need the brinksmanship. You need the threat of financial turmoil in order to accomplish what you want to accomplish politically. And all I'm asking you to do is do your job and calm the financial markets and say, look, interest payments are going to be made.
Congressman, my
Why
job
won't
is to
you
make
say
sure
it?
we can pay all the bills of the United States. You
Thank
cannot
you.
do
And we'll
that
agree
unless
with
Congress
that.
extends
Can we
the
pay the
deficit.
interest?
Congressman, you can.
Do we
you
have enough
cannot
money to pay
preserve
the
the full
interest?
faith and credit of the United States if you
I
don't
cannot
raise the debt
believe,
limit.
Mr. Chairman, that I have the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States here who has the opportunity to satisfy our debtors, both domestic and internationally, that we will pay our debts with interest at the appropriate time, and he refuses to do so. It is a dereliction of duty.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman.